either.
You have to swear more. Even that.
He sent me some notes, which it was too late to follow. So I'm afraid we're just going to go with what I take from the topic, and then obviously I hope for a lot of insights and inputs from yourselves. So we're going to have a little bit of an exercise by the end of this workshop. It is a topic that was started last year at the conference about participatory guarantee schemes. Shall we say participatory? We had a debate on the train, but didn't. So I don't know what's right, participatory or participatory. I think that matters less. We think it's a very important topic to discuss, and maybe this workshop will give further insights to the OGA, whether the OGA could be that body, that interested community of growers who would take this concept further. Lawrence obviously has a lot of knowledge about PGS, as they're called, and he published an article about this in one of the Organic Growth magazines. My experience is more into group certification, which is ICS's, internal control systems, because we set up a group certification system in Moldova according to the new EU regulations, and it's now in year 3. But before we set that up, we tried to set up our own standard in Moldova for a group of very small vegetable growers who wanted to follow organic principles and who needed credibility. And I failed because it was just a very, very difficult task to set up, to develop a whole set of standards. So we went for the group certification instead. And at that moment, I didn't know that there was something in the middle, something in between, which seems to be the PGS system, which is basically you take a standard which already exists, but you apply it in your own way, and it does offer to the grower the credibility and crucially that demonstrable evidence that the consumer needs in order to believe and to trust the producer. So why are we discussing this? Because there is a lot of talk nowadays about other alternative systems, environmentally friendly systems, agroecology, CSAs, not new, regenerative, and organic cannot be, too far from them, cannot be elitist. And I think the reason that we need to talk about such systems is for the OGA to be more inclusive and to inspire and to support those growers who cannot afford or for some reason will not go for the third-party certification systems. And at some point it caught my attention today, the program of today, out of all the workshops in the program, the word organic was mentioned twice. And, first I got a bit, upset about that. But then I thought this is probably right, because we need to, as an Organic Growers Alliance, we need to talk to people who are not necessarily certified or who are not yet certified. And this system, PGS, may be that tool that Organic Growers Alliance may want to apply to its members who are not organically certified. So we are going to have an insight about CSAs and how those come, how close they come to organic certification, or how similar there to PGS, but I will just have a few slides about the PGS, just in case some of you have not heard of it, and I'm not going to invent anything, because there's been, IFARM have developed a wealth of materials about PGS, and in fact they have a scheme in which a lot of these systems are recognized by IFARM, and the members of these systems can even use the word organic. So they have developed a generic presentation about the system and the main elements. So I've just picked a few slides, about 9 of them, which I will try to go. So this is the official definition of PGS. Participatory guarantee systems are locally focused quality assurance systems. They certify producers based on active participation of stakeholders and are built on a foundation of trust, social networks, and knowledge exchange. So it's not, if someone adheres to IFARM principles and to organic methods, but cannot go as far as the third-party certification, whether it's cost-wise or for other reasons, this is an assurance that you can have credibility if you follow these systems. So these systems, this is a map, a world map of these PGSs that have been developed by a collaborative project. And so you can see how they're spread around the world. You can see that this is not just a story, they're real, they exist, they develop. And you can see that they tend to be more in Asia and South America. There is a cluster of these systems now in development in Europe. But I'd like to pay your attention as blue dots. The blue dots are the systems that have been recognized by IFARM. So, which means there aren't many. And why? Because it's bloody difficult to get recognized. The requirements to PGS have become almost as rigorous as to third-party certification. In fact, you cannot really run away from the main pillars of third-party certification, which is evidence, transparency, following the organic standards to the letter. And this is why not many systems are reaching the utmost level. The green dots, very importantly, they are the systems that have been recognized not by IFARM, but by national government. Which means if there is a political will for a national government to recognize the systems, the local producers will enjoy the same level of credibility and respect, and they can even use the word organic in their activity. And the yellow system dots, they are the systems in development. They're not yet finalized. Why? Because apparently it takes about 3 years to set up such a system. So it's not that easy, let's be frank. Some of the most successful ones are in the United States. We'll go through some labels, and in India, in France, and in Vietnam. And those are the ones that are either in their own rights, even not recognized by the government, but they have built very strong brands and people know about them. They don't need government recognition, or they have been recognized by the government and they enjoy, even they're eligible for subsidies, just like organic growers are. So this map and the following slides have been developed by a collaborative project, Eating Craft. And IFARM was one of the partners in this project. And it concluded in 2019, but it looks like it is the most you know, the most voluminous piece of work into PGF systems. So it's still there for anybody who wants to launch such systems to use. So what do they offer, and why would, say, OGA look at a participatory guarantee scheme to launch and support? These are schemes for local markets. They are geared towards small-scale producers. They've been nicknamed the certification for the poor. And it's not necessarily about poor countries, but about poorer people who need access to good, healthy, organic food, but they can't afford the prices when the grower will attach the premium to his certification. So they tend to be more accessible products on local markets. And they're also a lot about connections between growers and consumers. And there is an education process going both within the group, between the growers, but also between growers and consumers. They are about short supply chains. As we said, they are about local markets, and they are more accessible for growers. So they tend to be less pricey in terms of certification and the final label or brand that you can attach to your product. This is why a lot of usually NGOs or cooperatives, they will launch or they will support a group of growers who want to launch a PGS system. Their whole reason for development and for promotion was to provide an organic guarantee for the quality of the produce. And as I said, in some countries, the members can use the word organic, in others they can't. In Europe, they can't. But say in India, the PGS has the organic label in it. But that doesn't matter that much, because what it actually entails is a lot of participation from the consumer side into the farms, so that they can actually visit and have a look around the farm. And this is how the credibility and the trust is built, rather than just looking at a certificate or at a label on a product. It's very grassroots and very feet on the ground. So if you want to believe me, you have to come and spend time with me on my farm and see how that works. So the relationships are meaningful, and IFARM recognizes these systems as viable alternative systems to third-party certification systems. So they are supporting the agroecological approach, fostering food sovereignty, but also for the agroecological farms, or for the regenerative farms, or for the communities of agroecological farms. This path might be the missing link in their chain towards trust and credibility, because it's really difficult to prove to someone that you are following an organic standard without any evidence. So applying or a PGS system might be just the missing link for that full trust from the consumers. So the key elements of PGSs are participation, and this means all the growers in the group have to participate, and they really have to participate. So where you save on money, but for certification, you actually put more time to carry out inspections to your peers or to develop the group. And also for consumers, they have to participate in all levels. They have to start with a shared vision, which means they have to develop a shared vision, and that can take months, unless you're really lucky to have a few people who initially have the same vision. They have to be very transparent, which means you as a grower cannot hold on to your records just because you don't have an inspector. You have to be fully transparent, and you have to be ready to show your records and your evidence to anybody in the group. They're based on trust. They are horizontal, which means there is no inspector, there is no other guarantee bodies, there is no chair, but they tend to rotate in tasks and functions within the group. And there is a constant learning process. So if someone cannot or is not fully compliant with the standard that they are following, the consequence is more about learning how to do that rather than excluding, although such elements can be possible, can happen as well. So a few key features. So first, they need norms or standards, if you like. And in most cases, they will apply a recognized set of standards, whether it's the iPhone standard or the national standard. So they don't normally come up with their own standards. They are organic standards of, which are held by some recognized authority. But it is a grassroots organization. It doesn't come from the top. It has to be launched and run and developed by growers themselves. It's suitable for smallholding and small-scale agricultures, and it is enhancing livelihoods and promotes organic agriculture in the same way that organic standards do. They do need the document management systems, whether it's software or whether it's pen and paper or whether it's just computer. There has to be an evidence system of the practices at the farm. And there are the group needs to have mechanisms to verify that compliance, which again, as I say, it brings it very close to third-party certification. They need mechanisms to support farmers who need that support, and every participant has to pledge, whether it's a signed contract or whether it's a video pledge or whether it's a freestyle pledge, but it has to be, every participant has to pledge their adherence to the standard that the group chooses, whether it's iPhone or the national standard. They can have seals or labels or brands, and as I said, in some countries they can have the word organic, in other countries they can't, and they have to know what happens to someone who fails to follow the standards, the rules. Are they excluded? Are they taught? And so on. So these are a couple of labels that are used by different PGSs around the world. And you can see in India, Organic India Council, they have certified organic produce. Then Nature et Progress, that's the French one. There is a very, very big one in the States. I think it's called Certified Naturally Grown. Yeah, the square one. And another label. So these are the labels that once standards achieved, once the conversion period is gone, the grower can use on their products. So as you see, it's quite similar to what we already know. So what do stakeholders do? Stakeholders are both growers and consumers. First, they have to select the standard that they will be following, and they have to shape it. So the beautiful thing about this is that the standards can be adjusted to the scale or to the national, to the regional context of the group that is undertaking it. So everybody has to participate to design all the procedures. They have to decide how the decision are made and who is making decisions, and they need to know what are the verification procedures, how that compliance is going to be verified in practice. The key point, the pivotal point in PGS is the peer review. There can't be a PGS without a peer review. Now, what is a peer review? Is instead of an inspector, it is the growers who will do the inspection. And every group will decide on their own peer review processes. Some groups decide that all growers must do the peer reviews, so they have a rota. Some groups will decide that, oh, we'll allocate this task to you and you and you this year, and then you and you and you next year. So some groups will say, right, all growers go to the farm visit today. So that's the rules that they do, but it's the core of the PGS system, and it's something that can take a lot of time of the grower, because if you have 20 growers, that means 20 days of the year you may have to go and visit a grower. And apart from that, you have to be trained how to review. You need the scoring points, the cards, and so on. So a lot to know. But it does mean that there is no fees for external inspections, and also this should imply no costs. So obviously every grower will assimilate the cost of traveling and learning to that. So, you know, these are the sides, the pros and cons of it. There is a 2.5-minute video about this, which I would like you to see. There are groups where someone wants to be part of both, have both the third-party certification and PGS. So that's not a mutually excluded thing. But these are the questions that anybody should ask individually and also as a group. What is the context in which this group or this scheme would be created? And, you know, talking cultural context, regional, political, if you want, how necessary it is, what are the needs, why would such a system be needed, and also what would be the challenges to do that versus what are the opportunities to have it. So these are the 4 questions that we are gonna try and tackle. Hypothetically, if OGA was to launch or to support such a group, is this a conceivable idea? Would this be something good for OGA to undertake? And if yes, then these 4 questions would have to be analyzed first. So we're going to do that, but not before I ask Gareth to tell us a little bit in this context about CSAs and how they fit into this model and what sort of verification you know, CSA members have. Please.
Okay, you're all here, yeah? I'm in a bit of a difficult position because both the CSAs that I help to run, they are actually certified organic. so the question, of course, that we're constantly asked and we have to justify to our members is why do we pay those costs? And I think that's worth looking at really from the point of view of what Tamara's just said. So one of the prime motives that I argue for paying that certification fee and having that person come along is basically the feeling of belonging to the organic movement. And that's valuable to me personally, but also I think to a lot of our members. And the reason for that is because when I say we produce organically, that's a very easy thing to say, and I don't know what that means in their heads, but everybody has an idea what it needs today. Whereas when I start saying things like, oh, we produce ecological, you know, we do agroecology, or we ecological production or whatever, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. Whereas organic is the kind of recognized brand, isn't it, in the UK. The other is a really practical reason that we originally certified is that obviously when we were setting up businesses, there's obviously a gap between the time when you have full membership, you've got a budget to fill, we hold projects basically, and obviously it's unlikely to do that if you've got an organic certification. To local shops and things like that. They also recognise the organic logo. So, in a way, I've given you some good reasons why we are certified organic. But as I've said, you know, a lot of our members, you know, and even on our steering committee would say, well, why are we paying this fee? Because we have, in a sense, both businesses are owned by their members. And it's deciding what goes on. So there is an intimate link between what we do, how the CSA are managed and their members, basically. So, for instance, both CSAs have a steering group which meets face to face once a month, which discusses the business, what's going on, the growers give a report. You know, the membership person, the finance person, they all give reports. And then on the steering committee, there's representatives of the members or the volunteers or whatever other groups are involved in the CSA. So they're making strategic decisions for the CSA. So there is that intimate link, basically. We have regular events. You know, usually seasonal, linked to the season. In some ways, we have at least 4 big events a year and 1 big party every year. So when we get all our members, or we try and get all of them back down on the farm, and you know, I think we've just had an today. You know, I've led a few farm tours, and people just come around and they look at what we're doing and they explain what's happening on the farm, take them through where we are in the season, and what growers are thinking, and what we propose for the future, and things like that. So, from that point of view, I don't think there is a need for us to certify because we have that trust. But as somebody in the film basically said, I think it was in the video, wasn't it? You know, how much do people actually know about farming, and how can they tell us that we use pesticides or not? So that's kind of an open question. But you know, the way we're completely open about everything, they can expect everything. So I feel there's an open link there, and also once a year we have a very open AGM where usually Lee spells out in detail what we've spent their money on, basically. What the wages are, what we think they should be next year, and all the rest of it. So we have a very open system that all the members of the CSA can participate in, should they choose. On top of that, they come down to the farm every week to pick up a share. So they are coming down to the farm every week, and they can interact with the growers on those farm visits. Or with the admin persons and the members to directly answer questions. But on any of those visits, that's through the school training problems. So we, you know, I always see a CSA as we try and be as open and democratic as possible. Growing. So for that reason, you know, I would say we probably, once we've built that initial contact and trust with one of this, we probably don't need to be certified. So those are two kind of different conflicting reasons that I've given for why we should be, why we shouldn't be. Would we go for a PGS system? I mean, to tell you the truth, it would depend on the details, you know, and I think, you know, what I'd like about seeing those PGS systems is the interaction between the farmers and the members. But what I also recognise is that, you know, you were saying that might take 20 days a year, you know, well, that's almost, you know, that's a whole month's work, basically. So, you know, how are we going to find that time to participate in this kind of system? You know? To be quite honest with you, and 20 days has a cost to it as well. So you know, where's that cost coming from, basically? And in a sense, you know, we pay 500 for the Soil Association, they come along, you know, it's only going to take a day or about half a day or a day. It's one every year, you know. The other thing I like about the certification system is that it forces us to keep those records. And I think looking at these PGS systems, we need, you know, obviously farmers have to keep those records anyway. I mean, it's always good practice to keep records, you know. So I don't know really, there's pros and cons for us. I mean, I think I am a member of the CSA network board, and I'd kind of like to bring in Caesar there, just to say from a whole network point of view, we have talked about participant systems, haven't we? Guarantee systems across the whole network and how that might work. I don't know where we are with that. So, or are we anywhere with that?
I'll just do a really quick reply from my other people speak. I mean, I think Gareth, you've really summed it up. I guess for some of them, they might not work. Do not work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not working. I'm holding it.
It works for the online. I think the bit Gareth called out the sort of member awareness of what's happening on farms. From the CSA perspective, is a really interesting bit about increasing knowledge of why we choose to farm organically, which Soil Association or other third-party certification doesn't do in the way that I understand PGS would. But I also, we're part of the agency, the Global Network, and we had a sort of session about this, and quite a few countries said it's extremely time-consuming. So I mean, I think that is the downside, but it'd be interesting to try. I'd like to sort of, you know, do a pilot with say 6 farms and see what it brought and what the challenges were.
Yes, well, if I took you back to that map, there was nothing in the UK.
There's a group of the Wholesome Food Association, which is a participatory scheme. No,
it's not participatory, it's self-policing.
Yeah, it's
Well, such initiatives, there are quite a few, like Vegan Organic Network has this grow-to-grow certification system, which we never were part of it. We went straight for the stock for organic standard. But you know, for those who didn't, you know, went certified, they said, well, let's launch this grower, and it fizzled out to nothing because growers were left on their own to do these peer visits and inspections, which just wasn't happening. On the other hand, the farmers markets, I think, are more successful in reviewing each other, but they have a slightly different system. I must say, PGS are not group certification systems. They are different. The group certification, especially the one that is coming now with the new EU regulation and obviously accepted by Soil Association and hopefully OFG, but still not tell us more. They are the same third-party certification, but they are doing in a more flexible way, and group members can share some of the costs, but they are not in any way PGS. However, a PGS group can upgrade, can transform itself into an ICS, internal control system. I haven't heard of the other way around, but the group that we set up in Moldova is now coming to the full certification, and we have big questions about financial sustainability. And I'm thinking maybe we should go to PGS. We have all the systems in place, we have all the manuals, all the evidence, everything. It's just the sheer cost of group certification which may make us decide to go into PGS. So, Stephen, would you like to say, do you have any experience with maybe not PGS but group certification, and what is your view as a certification body on this?
Sketchy, really, because we don't
Yes.
have any here.
Yes.
The EU organic reg, as we all know, is the EU organic reg, and we are in the EU. However, we do have to certify Northern Ireland to the EU organic. Oh, sorry. We do have to certify Northern Ireland to the EU organic reg. And it's the EU organic reg I'm saying that again, is where this group certification is going to come in. I think there's an interesting juxtaposition to think about. I've got organic farmers who are paying my wages in order to help maintain the integrity of their organic products. Then some people come along and I charge them a fifth of it because they've got whatever the system is. I'm not quite sure where PTS would fit into a certain group certification, which would have an internal control system. Somebody paying, so that somebody actually paying to go through those records, but they're paying through a group or one person in the group rather than each individual. I think that's my understanding. Why then would my farmer who's paying for her farm not just go, well, I'll join in with a couple of mates over there and do that sort of thing, and I'll stop paying. And what happens, so that's one thing. And the other thing is, what happens if there's a break in integrity, either through mistake or foul play?
Yes.
So it's those things that sort of twist my brain at the moment. I'm very open to the idea. I think, as you were saying, it's dependent on a measure of interaction that most businesses are not having. So how we have that alongside the other interaction, the normal, I don't know what that looks like.
I think it also depends on the standard that the PJS would accept. Some standards are just standards like iPhone standards, they're general principles, whereas other national standards, they also include points about compliance. And if a PJS takes the whole standard, say we are going to follow that, including compliance procedures and any consequence of non-compliance, then it's easier for them to just follow that. Otherwise, they would have to develop their own processes, which can be extremely difficult.
I will say there is in the warehousing and storage regulation, there's a light touch, because it's in 1 to 3 years. So, but that's on things that are already packaged. Regulatory, the legislative system saw that as low risk.
Yeah.
But it's a model.
There is a lot of examples about different groups. In fact, this presentation had 91 slides with a lot of examples. Also, how often they do peer reviews. If one peer is also third-party certified, does he also need the peer reviews? And so there are a lot of detail to it. The question is, though, is it something for the UK? Is it something for OGA? Is it something for anybody in this room to follow? So this is what we are gonna go into. But I just have one raise of hands and then I'll see who has comments. Would you raise your hand if you are organically certified? Okay. And then would you raise your hand if you are a grower but not organic, not third-party certified? Okay, thank you. So we are gonna, the hypothesis is that OGA will undertake a project, will get some funding, will support the PJS group. But the first 4 questions will need to be answered. So this would be my request for you. Did you have a comment before?
Well, I just wanted to add something that, well, I don't know, some of you might know that I've worked at Garden Organic for very many years, or several decades. And for a few of those decades, we discussed some sort of scheme whereby organic gardeners would be able to call them officially organic gardeners. And we went quite far down that road and developed what was named from our end a self-declaration scheme. We worked with Soil Association for quite a few years. They called it the Open Gate Scheme. And it's very similar to this, but I think that the crucial points around it is that you have to think about the scale at which you operate. So we were basically trying to do what Gareth was talking about, using or enabling organic gardeners who really follow the organic standards to the sort of nth degree, and to be part of the organic community, basically, in a more official way. So the idea would be for them to declare that they were growing their carrots organically, basically, and place them on the market, even if that was just to share them with their next door neighbour free of charge. They were still placing the material on the market. The issues that we come up against that was that it was difficult to define it in relation to scale. And you also, of course, have to have a standard to which you are transparent against. So what Garden Organic did was to translate the EU regulation at the time to what they now call the Garden Organic Principles of Organic Gardening, or whatever it's called, which basically lays out the idea. So I have a bit of difficulty to see how you will be able to engage with, more than those who actually grow according to you're saying you're going to incorporate people who grow agroecologically, people who are regenerative. Well, you can only do that if they are prepared to also follow the organic standards, of course. So you can't bring them in any other way. No. And if they do that on a larger scale, I sort of wonder why they wouldn't like to be certified. The issue that's always come up when we've talked about it, what was that everybody said, well, go ahead and do it, but don't call the produce organic. Yes. And what they're saying now. Well, yeah. Go ahead. And I even asked Deborah at the time what would happen if we did, because I very much object to that. The idea was to make really small scale growers to be proud that they were organic. So having to call it naturally grown or something else just wasn't good enough for me. So I think we would have to sort of stay how that sits sort of within the legislation. Perhaps it will fit better now, then we don't have to follow the sort of the EU legislation around it. They have an opportunity to do something different.
Well, as I mentioned, some governments do go the extra mile, and they recognize the systems as organic. And there is third-party certification, for example, in India, but also they have PGS, organic produce, which is just talks about the political will and also the sheer number of small-scale growers in India makes it feasible to create such an alternative scheme, so that those who do not think about exporting, those who do not think about upscaling their production, they only have a very small plot, but they want the credibility, they want to sell to a market which will only take organic produce. This is the route for them. Those who are not organically certified, would you tell us your opinion about this scheme, and would this be something that would interest?
I guess it might be of interest, but I think not for the certification. Having listened to it, I said before we started, it would have been more interesting as a certification. But I think it's a very valid point that was mentioned with regarding CSAs. Even as a really small scale grower growing on to an acre and a half at the moment, actually 20 days of my time a year, when I'm the only one doing it, would make this cost prohibitive, despite claiming to be a cheaper alternative, than paying the £1,000 for soil association to get a starter registered and then ongoing at £500. Because I'd like to think that I could earn more than 25 quid a day. And completely understand what you're saying about it potentially working in India or to the other areas, but I think anywhere in the UK, if we are even just surviving, it wouldn't be economically sustainable as a certification, as an alternative to going to an existing organisation. Where there may be much more interest is in groups of local growers sharing equipment that's much more expensive and sort of only going to be used for a day or 2 days a year, to use and a pool of sharing common knowledge, or maybe even in different soil sites within a local area, sharing different crops. Then that sort of community base would actually be of much more benefit. But if we're saying 20 days or go to soil association or ONFG, you cannot be economically balance 20 days versus £500 a year.
Doesn't have to be the rule. As I said, every country, every group has their own set of rules about peer review, and a group may very well decide that you are the only one who will do it. Actually, will pay your expenses, and actually will find some money to pay for your time. So it's different. But if we talk about the context, regional context, I think what we are hearing is a regional context for the UK, and maybe one of the reasons, and also the challenge. One of the reasons why these are not springing up like mushrooms in this country is the cost of the time involved in that. And also maybe people are not that keen to visit other farms or to have other farmers on their farm. What do you guys think?
Oh, I completely agree with that. Actually, you might love going on farm visits. You love going to the Land Workers Alliance. I love these sort of conferences. I'd actually completely, so I'd be very surprised actually if anybody within the organic movement wanted to hide away from other people, because actually that's where we get our benefit, that's where we get our community focus, that's where we share things that help everybody.
Yeah.
It's not a commercially intellectually greedy type community or business.
Even
So
if
I
they
don't
want
think
to
that
do
would be
your
the reason.
computer, and
Sorry?
even if someone wanted to see your records, your accounts,
Well,
your storage, because that's what implies. It's not just an open day.
I don't see that
It's
any
complete
issue. I mean,
transparency.
we regularly chat to, the last session I was with was talking about how we can modify barns and how we can create better storage and different techniques. I personally, and from my involvement because we've only acquired the property last year at only test growing. So, but from that, I've never met anybody who wants to be greedy or doesn't want to share time and knowledge with each other. So I found it very welcoming and a refreshing change from other industries I'm
Yeah,
involved
one more comment, and I think we'll wrap up.
Thank you. So your questions there. So I'm working with a group of people who want to set up a giant food system in the city in the southwest. 20% of the entire market organic food by 2030.
In this country.
Yeah. If you see organic as entry level food, not the ultimate. I think this is, I did look at this, looked at the report from, I think, maybe Korea or somewhere, where they'd set up this self-certification scheme, and they put quite a lot of money into the beginning, and after about 5 years, the growers near the city were very on it, but the further away you got from the market, the lower the standards and the lower the peer review. And so you have to assume that human nature might get more lazy over time if there's less trouble going to come your way. So very local, but a way of bringing in people with window boxes and allotments and gardens, because they are part of the solution. Getting people growing more and being proud about it and saying, well, it's okay. You know, and someone's come along and said, so those 20 days, I think I heard you say that consumers can be involved. They can be
Yes,
providing some of
absolutely,
those
yes.
inspection days, not
Yes.
necessarily growers going out.
They could very well carry out the peer reviews alongside producers or investors.
So I was just thinking about this project I'm doing. So is there a regional context? Yes. What are the needs of the stakeholders? They want participation. They want to be involved in something that's part of the solution to biodiversity and climate crisis, rather than running away from it. It's cheap and it's reliable. What are the opportunities you've got? It includes customers, it ties them in. It's hundreds of gardens, there's hundreds of allotments. And over time, you need to track the changes. You need to see the wildlife returning. And you've got, you know, soil organic matter tests saying that it has risen over 10 years. All those things. So it's proof to the wider community that this stuff does really work. It's not just people messing around. And finally, what the challenge is, well, it's complex. It needs funding. It needs trust. It needs teeth. And it also needs a market. You've got to be able to sell all this produce.
Yes.
And that's the bit we're working on, to try and build a market. And then the growers will come in and fill the market.
You almost start with the market, because once you have a market, then you want these growers and they have the incentive to be part of the system, which is why some organic growers decide to join a PGS, because that PGS is linked to a specific market, and the rule of the market is you have to be a member of the PGS to be able to sell at the market. So this is how it's done. But thank you very much. I think we've covered it. I think that this is still a point to keep discussing and see when the opportunity arises. Just one more thing is that unlike group certification, every member will carry their own label and their own certificate, if you like, whereas in a group, all members have one certificate. And if a group manages to develop a very strong brand and logo that they can use, then basically they don't need that organic word anymore. It is about brand development and about you know, trust and credibility, unless they want to go organic, which I would like.
Organic movement.
Sorry?
What will that do to our organic movement? And surely the whole idea is also to grow the organic movement.
Well, I think what organic, I found organic are trying to do recently is to embrace as many movements and growers and different scales as possible, acknowledging that not everybody will be certified, but everybody wants and needs healthy food. And what they're trying to do is still promote the standard, making sure that the standard is at the core of these groups, although they don't want to take the infection. So,
Can I just do a quick plug to say that Lawrence, hopefully, and Stephen and I are doing a lunchtime workshop at ORFC. If anyone's going, then it will be a feed in thoughts if you want to come. And there's also an online session about the Ecuadorian Indian and the sort of global context.
when is that?
That's online, Oxford Farming Conference.
Oh, okay,
And
yes.
a face-to-face lunchtime workshop for anyone who's actually going. Stephen, don't look so confused.
Yeah, I think I suggested that. Yeah. Now we know. Well, thank you very much for your input. I hope I haven't failed Lawrence too much. And enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.